Welcome back, everyone, to the Disaster Tough podcast, where we share insights into the big plays and right calls of leadership. We dive deep into the stories, lessons learned, and ideas that will help you in the field. Let's go. Welcome back to the Disaster Tough podcast. I'm your host, John Scardina, a very great friend of mine, kind of a mentor, somebody I've been looking up to for a while. He's been on here the podcast several times. Chief Walt Lewis. He gets to come back today. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things, what's happening in his life in Orlando with fire. Obviously, he is with the USAR teams down there, Florida Task Force 4. We had Michelle Chikowski on here just a couple weeks ago. She got an award for helping them out last year, which was pretty exciting news. And then, of course, if you recall back last November, my team, Zach Boris, myself, Prescott Nato, we had an amazing opportunity to go out and present at the National USAR Conference at susar.org if you're going to look into that. But if you have heard anything about that, or if you had heard nothing about that, they're opening registrations right now. And so I want to do a big shout out for the National USAR Conference. It's an amazing opportunity to learn all things about what's happening in USAR. There's tons of presentations happening there. They have displays and an awesome trade show, actually, where you can go and look at all the latest equipment. And quite frankly, just like my compliment to the Florida Hazmat Symposium, what is really incredible about the National USAR Conference is that every single person who is organizing the conference actually does USAR. All of these guys and girls, they go out there, they do the job every day. And so when they're organizing this thing, all that passion comes through, and it's just this top notch all throughout. So I wanted to bring Walt back on here and be able to specifically talk about that, plug you a little bit. Make sure you guys, if you're looking to do something really exciting in November, especially if you're an emergency manager and you want to learn more about response, how they do it, just like I went through that several years ago. What an awesome opportunity, and it's pretty affordable and in a pretty cool spot. So with that, I want to introduce Walt to the show. Hey, Walt, how you doing?
Hey, good to see you, John. How you been?
I've been living the dream, podcasting every week, thinking about when I get to see you again. So
well,
it's a good day.
Right. Since I'm down in Florida, I'll take it that you wanted to see me, but I'm pretty sure you just wanted to come to Florida.
Heck, I will take a trip to Florida anytime. It is currently raining outside. Last week, when we tried to podcast, for full disclosure for the team, I had tornado sirens all day. We had 3 tornadoes in our county. So I would be happy to go down to Florida. So let's talk about the National USAR Conference. It's kind of a late coming, but the fact that the registration's open is probably a good time to re-look into this. The conference was just a knockout. It was a really great experience. There was pre-conference stuff for the USAR members, but there was a lot of learning opportunities while you were there as well. Can you walk through kind of what 2023 looked like, and maybe kind of a snapshot of what 2024 will look like?
Sure. So last year we had the biggest conference to date, and very proud of the partnerships we had developed through there with Teeks and Spec and so many of the other vendors that were there. The hotel had a great facility for us to be able to set up in, and a very large ballroom. We'd followed suit from what they done in Columbia under the leadership of Chad Bean and some of his teammates. But being here in Florida, Scott Chappell and I wanted to make something a little bit bigger. So we got permission from the board, and we released the hounds. So we had search and rescue dogs coming out and doing cool stuff as well. And they'll do some still cool stuff this year too. I'll talk about it in a minute. But we had pre-conference courses so that we could answer the need to many of the state teams that just can't afford to put on some of the classes independently. And the way the system works is there are only so many classes typically put on through the year. And there are so many urban search and rescue responders throughout the system, federally and then state-wise, that the preference goes originally to the FEMA teams, typically, especially when it's nationally funded, right? So through that, it may go through Teeks or other sources. So then the FEMA teams send their collection of people that need to get those classes first. And then if there's available seats, then it's opened up to the states. Well, 28 teams versus 50 states gets to be a lot of competition. And Teeks does a great job of trying to keep it all going, but there's only so much time in a calendar, only so much money, resources, etc. So those challenges were brought about by the states and asked if there's some other way we could make it happen. Well, we answered the call. So we try to put on pre-conference courses. We did a planning course, a plans team class, a safety officer class, and a task force leader class, plus also an L960 division group supervisor program, also a K9 down program. We did a bunch of stuff, and it was a great conference, well received. We had New Mexico Tech come into town. Now I'll take ownership of that, and that was my mistake. I misaligned where some things were supposed to happen, and they didn't present as strongly or as much as they should have. But they're welcoming us, or they're joining us to come back. We're very happy to have them. So they're going to be part of our program again, and New Mexico Tech is phenomenal. Great information. I don't think enough people go to their programs, so we're very excited to have them come and help be a part of our conference. And it's all relevant information. So my favorite part is the homemade explosives program, which doesn't sound, it sounds pretty dynamic, pretty exciting. But once you sit in the class and you realize what they're sharing with you, it's mind-blowing. So it's great stuff. So last year we had some great classes, and this year we're doing the same setup with having pre-conference classes that allow teams from states all over to send down 2 or 3 people that need that given class, and then be able to follow up and attend the conference itself. We also took some answers back from the vendors and the students that the conference, while it sounds great to have as 3 days with a 4-day or 5-day lead-in as a pre-conference, that is a very long time to be away from the family and from the workshop. So we shortened down to a little bit of a Monday and Tuesday pattern with half-day Wednesday so that the folks can fly back home and still get some work done on the Thursday, Friday of their work week. If they had left from the week before and attended to the Thursday, Friday startup of the classes from before, they got in a week's worth. They got a pre-conference class with a FEMA certificate. They got fellowship. They got great lunch, great facility, great weather, a lot of relationship building, and the conference itself. And for the conference, we have some great team members in the State Urban Search and Rescue Alliance board that are helping build things for this year. So I've got Howard Popple helping work things with logistics and run things in the background. He is I'm going to brag about him for a second because he is a background kind of guy. He's not an out front, hey, look at me, like me, right? I'm on a podcast. That guy is the guy that makes things happen. So I want to brag about him for a second. But we have a lot of great people that are helping put things together. We're excited about it. So the pre-conference courses so far, we're looking at Comms T, which is, we're going to try and alternate what we did last year, not do it again this year. So this way we can alternate the years, and that should help maintain the inventory of personnel that stay well-trained on each given team's rosters. So we want to answer that need. Comms T is one of them, Tech Search being another, K9 specialist. Again, the L960, because it's a very popular program. It's well needed amongst the country. And then a few others that we're looking at. New Mexico Tech, again, coming back. So we plan to hopefully fill up the hotel. Now, the beauty of it for the vendors is they get to come out and they have a distilled audience of just urban search and rescuers. It's task force leaders, it's program managers, it's regional directors. It's people with the wallets and the paychecks that are able to buy the stuff or know what they're looking at when they're talking to the vendors. So instead of the vendors having to meet with 100 or 1,000 prospects to talk to the one person that could maybe want to buy, they're talking to probably half the audience that was looking at their product. So it really makes a strong connection. And on the flip side, it's not only vendor-driven, it's also management-driven. So if I want to go somewhere and I want to talk to specific vendors, I want to talk to Western Shelter and DLX and Rescue One Connector Boats and everybody else that's bringing stuff to the table, I can do so in one place quickly, efficiently, and get some information and get some connectivity. So we're really trying to fit a bill, and it's only going to grow, we hope. But we also want the emergency management side of things. So that's where we're coming back to you to help us bring down some emergency management, to do everything that supports the people that are between the person in the pile and the person that pulls the trigger for us to go out and respond. So it's the build up, the planning, the everything beforehand, the knowledge, the education, everything that you need, the tools and equipment that you got to train on, the response mechanisms that exist, and how to make things happen, learning from experts that are in the field. And we have invitations open from experts all over the country that are coming to pass on their wisdom and knowledge, and keynote speakers. We're locking some things down. I don't want to announce it on this quite program. It'll probably be out by the time this is released, but I hate to speak ahead of time and spoil I'll do a spoiler alert. So we'll let that happen on the website, and it's USAR.org. You can go there. You can register for the conference. It's at a very reasonable price. Lunch is included. Hotel is not, but it's a very reasonable rate. The hotel's taking very good care of us, and it's Orlando. So travel in and out is very easy, and it's a 10 to 15-minute Uber ride from the airport to the hotel. So it's very, very friendly, and it's very close to the parks. There's actually a sidewalk from the hotel that goes to SeaWorld. So it is. It's awesome. And the weather's probably going to be good enough that you can go to Aquatica if you wanted to.
The L3 Harris Extreme 400p radio solves problems and is specifically designed for emergency services. How do we know? We field tested it with medical, urban search and rescue, and collapsed and confined structures. This radio is amazingly tough. Check out the L3 Harris Extreme 400p radio at l3harris.com right now. If you served in the military, you've probably worn Proper Apparel. Proper Apparel is now reaching out to first responders and those who love the outdoors. Check out Proper Apparel. From the outdoors to the EOC, wear proper. How do you spell Doberman Emergency Management? EOP, OEP, HVA, HMP, Thyra, TTX, Drone, PDA. Whenever you need an expert, Doberman Emergency Management field experts are there for support. Contact an expert at DobermanEMG.com today. And honestly, it's like, you kind of mentioned this before and you alluded to it, but like I wanted to bring my family down. When I come down, I'm definitely bringing them down this time so that I can do the conference. Then afterwards, I can spend some time with my family and kind of make it a double win because I'm already taking off, work. So I might as well do something with my family. Going back to the amount of I wouldn't say high profile, but leadership, maybe that's the right word for it, high profile or leadership that I met there. I was surprised actually because I have friends all over the country, and USAR is a niche thing specifically because it's supposed to be for USAR, and I was really impressed not only by the number of people who were there and the different backgrounds, but I was able to see a lot of my friends that I haven't seen there in a while. I had somebody that I went to Georgetown with. I didn't even know that she was leading USAR in Oakland. There was another friend of mine. Pasco County Sheriff's Department was there, and the emergency manager came there. Some of the vendors like L3 Harris and Proper, and you mentioned Teeks and so many other people out there. FirstNet. I know a lot of these people across the industry, and to see that like coming together is pretty fun because I want to support you and I believe in what you guys are doing. But you guys put on something incredible, right? It's good for everybody, as you mentioned, and I do hope it grows. And that's kind of the reason why I want you to talk about it. From a leadership perspective, as you guys have been growing, it was very impressive to see who was giving the presentation. So you even had a group from Korea out there, which was a lot of fun. In fact, I literally just had it. Oh, I do, yeah. If you're watching this, I got a patch from the Korean team. I gave one of them a challenge coin, and the guy literally ripped the patch off. And as a guy who lived in Asia and lived in Japan, I recognized that a huge sign of respect from them. And it was just cool to see that. It was cool to see like even the international component and people coming together. And like that was a great experience in itself. Big shout out to, I have to do a shout out, if we're doing shout outs, to Zach and Prescott. I thought their presentations were insane about AI, especially as Zach has former USAR, and Prescott is in the fire service, and talking about their different perspectives of outreach and how to do outreach and how to get public awareness for USAR so that it can get funding and all those different things. And so it really is a special experience, not only for the fact that you can go to SeaWorld afterwards, but the event itself is worth going to. I want to switch gears here a little bit, though, because, as we're thinking about leadership, and I think I've brought this up on a podcast before, but I'm going to provide a little bit more context for my audience. When I did a training several years ago, it was our first time doing it. We didn't know how to do it. we're a small business. We were a startup, and I really wanted it to be a special experience. And I'm going to compliment you pretty heavily here. I wanted something that could be remembered basically forever. I really wanted to make it special, but because I'm a small business and because, we're trying things out, I basically had to pull in some favors. And I still remember asking you to help out, and you did it without hesitation. For everything that you did, You did that with hesitation. And then what was mind-boggling to my team was for all your accolades, for everything you've done, you could be, and I talked to Pete Gaynor about this. Pete Gaynor's kind of the same way. He's a servant leader as well. You and him, because of what you've done, could be really pompous and really standoffish. Like you could push people away. And what was shocking was not only are you not that kind of a person, which is helpful, but you were the first person to help out, like literally picking up the water bottles or moving the things or willing to go get coffee or whatever. And as somebody who looks up to you, I was really impressed by that and blown away and wanted to support you wherever I could, which is part of the reason why we're doing this episode. But years later, you're still like that. You've done other things since then. Surfside building collapse, which nobody wants to happen, but the fact that you were there and helping it out, and you had these things that you've been a part of that are legendary to be remembered and to be able to be done right, and yet you're very humble. And so the question the reason why I'm bringing that up is because our field right now, especially emergency management, but I think other fields, as it's starting to mature, I'm seeing a lot of people who are in mid-level positions starting to get a real big chip on their shoulder, like they've done something, and they really haven't yet. And for the ones who have, even me, like that, the level of cockiness that comes out sometimes. How have you stayed so incredibly humble, and what would your advice to be for the field, whether it's emergency management or otherwise, of staying approachable? How do you manage those conflicting things? Like, I've done cool things, but I'm just Walt Lewis. Like, I don't even know how you fit in a room, honestly. So,
well, if I had to pay you per compliment, I'd be broke.
I got a few more, so yeah.
So I appreciate the kind words. First, I'm a little, I wouldn't say embarrassed. So I appreciate the kind words. As far as the advice goes, I mean, God didn't make me any more important than anybody else. Everybody's got a value in this world and on this earth. I'm happy to contribute. I've got a wonderful family. I'm following Christ. My point is to be here for the needs of what I'm asked for. And part of that is giving back in anything way that I can. If I can avoid a tragedy for somebody, if I don't, what am I doing for them? What am I doing for myself? So much of my fire service career, I was very engaged. I still am. And on a selfish note, all of it has always been to make me better at my job, so I have a greater chance of going home to my family. And in turn, that has a lateral effect and hopefully making others around me better and willing to share. And I want them to share with me because I haven't been to the same fire calls. We were doing a discussion last night, and I haven't been to the same fire calls that even some of our junior guys have gone to. So for them to share with me, it helps me be a better responder. But I've got some phenomenal people in my life, and I've had some great, great opportunities. And I've had some bad days. And I think those bad days early in my career help point out that you need to be smart and know about this job as much as possible and whatever this job is. And I could certainly take an easy path, sit back and just let things come to me and then just shrug my shoulders if I didn't succeed and say, well, it's just kind of the way it goes. And there's too many people that do that, in my opinion. I'd rather be a proactive member of the emergency response community because there's a mantra that goes around. It's in all kinds of businesses. Would you want to be the you that serves you when you need you to be there? You want to be the USAR responder? Do you want to be the firefighter? Whatever it applies to. Do you want to be the emergency manager that's there for your community? And the answer should be yes. You should be as much of an expert in your field as possible. So my vocation is also my avocation. It's, but every big dog starts as a puppy. So wherever you're at in your career doesn't mean you can't start late. A friend of mine, Candace Ashby, she does a great program, leadership from the bottom up. And quite a few years into her career, she realized, wow, I could do better at what I'm doing. And she's sharing her message nationally, and people just absorb it because she presents well and she's articulate and intelligent, but she also speaks from the heart of how I realized I could have done better and how I didn't, but I am now. And I want to make that better for you. So please listen to the message. And if it inspires you, then do great. And her and dozens of others, but a common friend of ours, Joe Hernandez. I love that guy. Love that guy like a father, like a brother, like a great friend. He doesn't realize the impact he's had on my career, and he never really would. but you really wouldn't. But the people that you have an impact on know how much you impact them, right? And go back 30 years when I started learning about urban search and rescue and medical treatment of patients in the pile, and I was one of the few people that raised my hand that wanted to know more about it. I was reading his articles and Dr. Barbera's and Patty Cantwell's to learn about crush, because it does us no good to dig deep and rescue somebody out of a pile of a collapsed building and then they die short time later because we didn't know what we were supposed to do afterwards. We're foolish. And through his work of the years, more or less adopted me into his family of instructors and giving me a place to be and to learn and to be around great other folks that just are just awesome to be around. Vinny Johnson and Ahmed Abusala and Jennifer Brown and all kinds of people that are in his cadre. I couldn't, I don't mean to be disrespectful to all of them, but I love them all. They're just phenomenal people. And one of my favorite things that inspires me the most, that's what I like about being on this program, being with, the group that you carry with, Joe's group and others. And there's quite a few fire service intellectuals that go beyond the problems and the perils and the pitfalls, but what can make us better? How can we make this improve? What are some of the bigger issues that need tending to? And what's a path to get us there? And how do we solve that problem? And what do we need to do? And that's what I love about our USAR board is it's a bunch of high-level thinkers that see a need, want to work on it, and dedicate themselves. This is completely voluntary, but it's more or less a full-time job, and want to make everything better for what is our world.
The what's fascinating about your answer, and a couple different things. I asked you about humility, and you started, the very first word you said was God. And then you continued to deflect and made it about all the other people who've helped you. And yet I feel that way about you to me. I know Zach feels that way about you to him. I know that Prescott sees that. I know so many other people look at you. We look at Joe the same way, honestly. I look at Pete Gator the same. There's a group here where I wish that I could just do like a 4-week rotation of just the four people that I look up to. I'm like, if you're gonna learn anything from this podcast, just listen to these 4 guys. Like I'll just step out, you just listen to them, and it is seriously a huge honor that I get to even interview you. I'm gonna go like hardcore real quick, because when we're recording this, it's gonna come out in about a month, and people are gonna hear this then. But it is technically Sunday was Palm Sunday. It's Easter week, and I'm gonna read part of this verse, and I think it perfectly describes you. It's talking about people who become basically righteous. It said, he yields to the enticings of the Holy Spirit and putteth off the natural man and becometh a saint through the atonement of Christ the Lord, and becometh as a child, submissive, meek, humble, patient, full of love, willing to submit to all things which the Lord has seen fit to inflict upon him, even as a child doth submit to his father. It's one of my favorite verses of all time. And it puts in the perspective of submission, not as weakness, but as willing to say yes and willing to help and willing to care for other people. It's basically describing charity. And without trying to get too emotional, I have a firm belief in Jesus Christ, and I have a firm belief in God, and I have a firm belief that every single day I need to repent and get better. And I am so incredibly grateful for these powerful people in my life like yourself who exemplify that, so that I know what that looks like in my life. Like I can read the verse and I can be like, okay, like what does that look like though? How does somebody be a fire chief? How does somebody like have command presence? How does somebody be a leader? And yet how does somebody remain humble and meek and patient and full of love? Like all those things. And I'm going to keep you broke because I'm going to keep complimenting you. But like I had the thought this morning, it was around 7:30. I was all giddy, and my wife was like, "Why are you giddy?" I'm like, "Oh, I get to record with Walt today." And she was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And then I said, and it kind of blurted it out, but I'm going to say it on the podcast because I want it to be recorded forever. If every person on this earth was a little bit more like Walt Lewis, the world would be a better place. Honestly, like half the problems would go away. And I have a unique opportunity because of my position to meet a lot of people in high level positions in government and otherwise. And those people sometimes have a big title, but don't carry a lot of weight behind it. And sometimes they do. But if they were all a little bit more like Walt Lewis, a leader and yet still kind, man, some of the stupid stuff that we watch on the news would just be gone. It wouldn't even be a thing because it doesn't even cross your mind, or if it does, you don't let it on. So I know it's kind of a digression of this podcast, but seriously, thank you for everything you do for the field and for everybody else.
Well, thank you. I don't know what else to say, but it's how my parents raised me, how my brother loves me, my brothers love me, and sisters love me, and for all my wife contributes to me. She's made me a better man, and my kids. So
my wife has had to kick and prod and do all this other stuff to make me a better man. I'm pretty stubborn, but thankfully for her patience, I'm
that's all once.
Lots of patience there. I'm sure we have good people in our lives, and maybe that's really the theme of this podcast is just remembering good people in your lives. If you're in a position where you don't find yourself to be surrounded by a lot of great people, choose to be the good person. And Pete Gaynor says this all the time. I bring up Pete because we both know Pete. But he says that people do notice, and I agree. I have hired people at my company. We're up to 25 or 30 now. It's because I keep noticing the good people. I want people like that around me, and I want to learn from them. And we can't afford Walt, but I would love to hire him. I don't know. It's like a permanent mentor. But
the biggest thing is time.
Yeah. So maybe that's the last segment here, because there's an excuse that people give. I don't have enough time, or it's inconvenient, right? Like, hey, somebody gives you a call at 3:00 in the morning. Hey, I'm exhausted. I have to be up in 3 hours for work, or whatever it is. Or, hey, my car broke down. You're a type of person who goes and helps out. I try to be a person who's learned to like helping out, right? If you are going to give some advice, especially emergency managers who never feel like they have enough time to do anything, or like military spouses or otherwise, like the whole field, right, of emergency services, how do you balance time between making sure you take care of yourself so that you can take care of other people, and trying to figure out the priority of, like, this is an appropriate time where I should help, this is an appropriate time where I need to let them kind of figure it out? How do you balance that? Because you can't help everybody all the time.
No, yeah, absolutely not. If I could, I'd be exhausted and spent, and I'd never have time for my families. But my wife and my children are my priority. So, and it took a lot for me to learn. But my life is a little different from most. I started young, married, had a son, and then sadly, 18 months into it, we divorced, and then I was more or less a single dad every other weekend for that one. And as time went on, got less and less engaged in his life. And I stayed very active, but I was very active, so there's nothing else I could afford to live because of child support and everything else that was going on. And I wasn't as good of a person as I'd like to think that I'm better now. I am better because of who I have in my life more around me these days. But as that progressed, there was a lot of trials and tribulations along the way. But I always had rocks in my life, like my father, until he passed away. My oldest brother, who I've gotten better close to in these last 10 years, but my other brother, John, who's in the fire service as well, he's always been there for me for any moment I've needed. I think I spoke to him in one of the previous podcasts where we had a live fire tragedy that I was a part of that really was a dark time in my life. And the night that occurred, he was on a plane to come down and be with me for a week to help carry me through that. And I'll always love him and thank him for that. So it's those times in life when you have people in your life, and sometimes you don't have enough of those people. But when those times come, you appreciate them. And if you don't have them, do what you can to build those people. And they don't have to necessarily be blood relatives, but 2 or 3 good people that will help be there to give you the advice you need, to be the ear that you need. And sometimes you need to be that person for somebody else. And you mentioned about, serving, but it's funny. There's one little point in my life that I regret, and it goes all the way back to when I was 16, 17 years old. I worked at Red Lobster as a busboy, and there's a guy that came from Trinidad and Tobago. His name was Ernest. I couldn't remember his last name if I knew it even then. And he broke down on a Sunday morning, and he called me because I was one of the only people he knew his phone number, and he asked for me if I could come help him. And I was so tired and lazy, I didn't. And Ernest, I'm sorry. I didn't come help you that day, but I don't like that feeling. I like to be able to help I like to be supportive. But a dear friend of mine who's no longer with us, Matt Negley, pointed out the obvious of a yes to this is a no to something else. So be careful what you say yes to sometimes, because you're stealing time from the things that you really need to put time to. And to that, my wife has been gracious in reminding me when I need to temper my things for my family, to be home for them. Spring break, I worked a bunch on the front side, and then we spent time heavily on the back side of it. So the last couple of days. Now in the conference, as that is an example, we purposely want to make that family friendly so that the instructors, the speakers, the attendees can come with their family. And while it is enjoyable to come and be isolated and do those things, a week is a long time. And if you come for a couple of days and then the family joins you, they can be at the pool and you can have dinner together at night, and your kids can still see dad or mom and spend some time with you, and you can all enjoy it. And that's what I've done more so to help stay grounded, is when I do any speaking engagements or go out of town, I try to set it up so that I can be there with my family. And I follow my brother on that one. When he retired, or towards the end of his career, as he was doing more teaching, he set it up so that if he went somewhere, his wife was able to come with him, so that he wasn't out of the house away from her. Because we marry these people and we have them in our lives because we love them and we want to be around them. And we do need our separation and distance, but I hate to miss out on seeing cool things without them.
Yes. I'm the exact same way. I don't like to, if I travel for work, I intentionally don't go see the fun thing, because I don't want to say I did this thing that was unique without my wife. I don't want to go see Stonehenge in the UK, for example, without her. Luckily we have done that one, but all that stuff. I want to round out kind of what you're, gosh, of course you give tons of great advice. I had somebody once tell me there's no such thing as balance. Stop trying to say balance. And the world keeps on telling people it's all about you, and choose to be selfish. It's okay to be selfish. No, it's not. That's all a lie, right? If you say yes to one thing, you are saying no to something else. And it's very important you prioritize what that is. A great decision-making matrix on that is good for family, good for self, good for the world. And, if you follow that kind of line there, you'll be able to, make sure that you kind of prioritize a little bit. But, in terms of the time aspects, I always found that I had a lot more time than I thought I'd had, and I have never really regretted, especially after a service project, helping somebody, truly, you go away feeling good. I have felt bad every single time of knowing I should have helped and I didn't. The last thing that I think is fascinating about you, because I just complimented you as being a great person, and you are a great person, but you just showed that it happens with time. And if the lessons, another lie that people say is people can't change. 100% people change all the time. Not only physically, I've gotten fatter and wider, and that's a problem.
The club.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the spare tire. It's this problem. But people also emotionally change. The things I cared about as a teenager, I was much more selfish then. I also have some dark nights of thinking, dang it, I really should have helped that person out, or I should have done that thing. I don't think that anymore. I just go without hesitation because I don't want to have that feeling anymore. If the difference between what's that thing, the humility versus humiliation, right, is that evil in the world will try to humiliate you, but being humble is saying I need to change and actually doing something about it. You're a doer. This is how to do it right in terms of being a good person. Maybe that's what we title the podcast or whatever. But we pitched pretty heavily the National USAR conference. So everybody should sign up for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. If you want to figure out how to be a better person, you just got a lot of good advice about that. I read a part of a scripture today, so you got that. We covered all the bases here. So if somebody's listening, they had to get something out of it. Walt, because it's been a while since we've had you on the podcast, and because it'll probably be, several months, maybe around the conference when we get to have you back on again, what would be your advice to the field if you're going to give back something to the field? What is that one piece of advice you're you got to know this? Listen to Disaster Tough.
Yeah, there you go. Listen to the Disaster Tough podcast. A lot of great people to listen to. So
What's the real one?
outside of me, yeah, all kinds of people on here. That's great. Man, I didn't prepare for that one. So you'd mentioned a little bit about the decision making, and sometimes our jobs, our lives don't put us in a, don't give us all the education we need to do the job itself. So one of the things we were just talking about yesterday, again, with smart people in the business, talk about decision making. So sometimes it comes down to your choice to making a decision, and when it affects you only, you'll take more risk, right? So I use the analogy of you got to run across a busy roadway because you want to go get lunch, and that restaurant's right over there. You look both ways. Cars are far enough apart. You'll make the run. But put your kid in your arms, and now you're responsible for somebody, and you're a little more tempered on that, right? And as an emergency manager, you have a whole community relying on you. You got to, you're not going to run so fast. You're going to plan it out. You're going to maybe build a bridge or stop traffic, turn the right light red, whatever. You're going to be a little more proactive. But those days that we just feel bogged down or that other people aren't supporting us in our operation, realize the great enormity of responsibility that you carry is magnificent, but so is the reward. And you may not get the accolades you deserve, but it will be you and the people that know the work that you do that truly appreciate it. And sometimes that's the best you're going to get. You might not get the thanks from the boss that you're looking for. If you're always looking for thanks in this business, you're going to be disappointed.
That's actually the real advice. If you're
so
it's a thankless job sometimes.
It is.
Honestly, who cares? Do it anyways.
But I brag about it. I work directly with our emergency management, Manny Soto and April Taylor. They're phenomenal. I love them. They do work that we'll never even know about, but our city doesn't go without. Any emergency we have, they have it taken care of.
Speaking of which, I need to have Manny on here. I haven't seen him since the last die pop. So
Major Soto, he's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so of course you knocked it out of the park without thinking about it. That's why I like putting you on the spot. Hey, if you got something out of this podcast episode, like I said, we covered the gambit. We found you a conference to go to. We found you some cool people to hang out with. We told you how to become a better person. We told you it's okay to suck in the past as long as you're becoming better. We literally read you scripture and birth testimony. We got the whole thing covered. If you got something out of this podcast, which obviously you should have, you got to like and subscribe, the whole deal. If you have found some sage advice in your own life and you have questions or you want to get better in your field, make sure you reach out to the field, right? You can comment on a social media post for Disaster Tough, or you can email a friend. You can email it us. We'd love to know what's been working for you. And with that being said, we'll see you for the next one. Peace.